And last week we talked about this concept in Vajrayana Buddhism, the Tantras, called naked awareness. And we talked a bit about Tapahuitsa, who is seen as the naked Buddha. He is the representation of this quality of open, spacious mind, unbounded awareness that has no form. And so the image that I showed you last week, he appears without any clothing, and he's sort of seated, not necessarily on a lotus in a garden, but in the open sky. And there are clouds surrounding him and such. This is very sort of a key representation in many traditions, many meditation traditions, that the mind is like this. It is like a boundless, vast, open sky, and all of the forms of mind, the thoughts, the distractions, form as clouds and disperse on their own. Things are constantly forming and dispersing. So this first stage that we did last time, naked awareness or open awareness, we might call it kind of the experience itself of shunyata, which is profound openness, sometimes called emptiness in Buddhism. And it's that process where we drop from the thinking mind into witness, into what we might call meta-conscious awareness, or this sort of clarity, this fundamental clarity of the ground of our mind as luminous and bright and open. This quality, as Longchenpa tells us, that there are four what we call samayas, or realizations. In this context, Longchenpa talks about realization. He uses the word samaya, which can also mean discipline. But here it's really about realization, that many of these qualities we're looking at, and in particular naked awareness, has four characteristics. One is ineffability, that we simply cannot conceptualize, we can't name, we can't apply form to this quality of mind. You know? So it's ineffable. We can't express the experience. It just is suchness, if you will. And then the second quality is profound openness. Just this sense of unboundedness in heart and mind. Ultimately, the two are one here. But a spacious openness of consciousness. And then the third is presence. This notion that presence actually is a very highly clear and lucid quality of consciousness. And then the fourth, as he says in this poem, unitary, or oneness. Sometimes it's translated as oneness, but it's the mind of unity. This realization that we are not separate from each other, but we are fundamentally interdependent, interconnected. Yeah, that there is no distinction at a certain point between me and you, he and she, and so on. But there is this larger sense of consciousness that is one. And this is alive in many of the traditions, whether it's Buddhism or yoga, the Tantras. So here on this, today, the second stage that we're looking at is one of refuge. And I really like this concept of refuge. It's very practical, not because we look at refuge on the path as an escape from anything. Quite the contrary, many of us may think of refuge as sort of a hiding away, or a sort of retreating away from something. And certainly it may have that characteristic. But in this case, I think of refuge. How is this helpful during difficult times, during life change, during chaos? That it is a place where we can inhabit our own space without the clutter of other energies, other people. That it's a place of creativity and expression, a place of freedom, a place where we can encounter naked awareness where we are safe, and we're in a place where we're not being outwardly directed by other forces, but we're really able to come back, in essence, to the core of our own experience. And so in this case, we are not necessarily escaping, but we are re-engaging. We are repositioning ourselves and finding a vantage point with which we can hold the disparities in the world, the challenges, what we see happening on the larger sort of front in our politics and our culture and our society. And so, not escaping means we're not ignoring, right? We're not just tuning out and saying, okay, I'm going to pretend for a while this doesn't exist, but rather it's a way to reposition ourselves so we can hold it differently. And so this is why refuge here is already coming right at the beginning as the second stage, because this is the place, it's the location we do a lot of the work when we're not out there uh, in constant action and reaction, especially within the reactive habit body. So largely what we might call a refuge from the collective consciousness that is happening, or what some have called the mass mind, especially in our own tribe, of the people that we feel a great affinity for and we agree with, and we can all just revel in complaining about those people over there on the other side. Yeah, it's fun to do that, and it stirs us up even more. So here we are retreating, if you will, from the collective conscious process so we can have some renewal. We can reclaim all of that energy that is being outward directed, leaking out, if you will, from the heart, from our potential. And in this way, rather than freedom, however we might interpret this word, rather than freedom depending on conditions for us to practice on our path, we are here bringing freedom into the world itself. And this is what Longchenpa is talking about, freedom attending reality. We need that refuge to do this. And so here, the second stage is really about cultivating a space where any and all energy that does not belong to you be gone from your space. Um, and in that sense, what we call the middle way, which is one of the later stages we'll be looking at, the middle way can only really truly arise in that space of refuge, not escape, but this sort of openness, this sense of possibility when we're not being sort of taking in all of the chaos and all of the stuff that's happening in the world. So another word actually that is relevant for refuge here, I think, is renunciation, because for that time that we are looking to be in a refuge of some kind, we are agreeing to this practice that you find ubiquitously in the teachings of renunciation. Now, we don't have to be smothering ourselves in ashes and sitting on a cushion and necessarily vowing to give up everything in our lives. In this context, renunciation is really for the time we are in refuge. We are allowing ourselves to let go. And actually, it's not necessarily even letting go, it's more relinquishing. The term letting go to me sometimes feels far-fetched. It feels difficult to think about just sort of letting, quote unquote, letting it go. But relinquishing, to me, and I don't know how this sits with you, it implies sort of a closed fist that releases. This is something we can simply do without sort of putting all that pressure to let go of everything in our lives. We're just relinquishing that grasping. This is, in a way, the heart of renunciation. And you don't have to be an ascetic to do this, yeah, or in a cave somewhere or in a monastery. We can do this right now as I choose simply to relinquish. And in this case, in refuge, I choose to relinquish all that energy that does not belong to me so that I can come home to this place, this space of possibility, this space of creativity, this space of expression, and this space of utter simplicity. And so part of refuge is also cultivating a space that is free of complexity, free of a limitation of mind, that the mind itself is no longer limited by what others think of us, by what people are doing, by what we feel like we have to do. But we are truly free in that refuge. So refuge here is a space, it's a place and a space of freedom where we are as we are. No need to be different. So, in the absence of complexity, in the absence of the limitations of the heart and the mind, the emotions, and all of this, yes, they are there. Yeah, we're not subjugating anything, but we're allowing ourselves to rest into a deeper experience of simplicity. Just imagine letting go of all that effort, all of that effortness, all of that trying, all that striving, just for a moment. We're going to do that in a bit when we practice. So, relinquishing the trying, the controlling, the striving, the fixing, the doing. What does it feel like to be effortless in a state of utter simplicity, just in this moment as you are, you know, with just enough effort, like the eagle. In Tibetan Buddhism, we have this sort of metaphor of the eagle. If you've ever seen an eagle, I actually just saw for the first time an eagle, and Marie, you were there. Marie was there too. So was Jem. Ken was there as well. There were a few of us on this call at the retreat on touching the earth at Rolling Ridge. There was a bald eagle nesting in way up in one of the pine trees at the top above the building at Rolling Ridge, and it was spectacular. It was the first time I'd actually seen a bald eagle. And so this eagle that we are cultivating within us is this perfect expression of the balance between effort and effortlessness. And if you've ever seen a bird, it may not have been an eagle, it could be a seagull, which rhymes with eagle, but a seagull at the beach. It's hanging there in the air. It's just buoyant. The wings are stretched just enough to keep it up. After all, if it pulls its wings in, what happens? It drops. This is us in meditation. Just enough effort, keeping those wings spread gently and otherwise buoyant. Let yourself hang, just hang in that sky and let the wind just kind of knock you about a bit, perhaps, move you here and there. Also, the eagle's vision is sharp and crystal clear. This is what we are seeking to awaken in our practice, is this clarity of mind that misses nothing. Nothing is rejected. Nothing is grasped. We're just simply watching the play. So if we can be in simplicity like this, balanced between effort and effortlessness, a sense of acceptance of all things as they are in this state, we don't have to be resigned to them. We don't have to say, oh, this is right or wrong. We just simply are with what is in this way. We are opening even more to the greater process of the stages that come after refuge. So why else cultivate refuge? For those of you who practice regularly, or even if you just sort of have 5 minutes a day where you do breathing, there's a sense of lightness or lightening your experience, perhaps, that you feel when you practice. And ultimately, lightening the density of these bodies that we carry, but also the mental body that is so reactive and needing to choose sides around these very big issues that we've been facing lately, particularly this week. So, what we're seeking here is really a middle way. You know? And it's okay to have opinions, right? It's okay to have judgments about things, but we also need refuge from our own thoughts. And so, in this way, this protected space, this space of intention, and why we begin with the bodhicitta prayer, is to set the aspiration for that which is beyond. It's not enough just to have an opinion, right, about these things. But as part of cultivation on the path, we want to vibrate at a higher frequency, if you will. We want to, or we're seeking at least, kind of a way to hold all of it, not just what we carry, but what the world is carrying. And this is the bodhisattva ideal. This is that sense of holding suffering differently from a different vantage point. And refuge allows us that vantage point. So, um, So let's perhaps what might be a good takeaway here is that refuge and practice doesn't have to be an escape from anything, but rather a re-engaging and a heightening of our engaging with what is in a way where we are stable and clear and settled. The mind is settled. There is a calm in the body. We are breathing. We are attending to the present moment of where we are, and then how we relate to the things in our lives will feel slightly different. We may even hold them differently or see them differently. Refuge, thinking of refuge not as as an escape or a fleeing or like having to sort of shut out the world. It may feel non-intuitive, but rather it's a place where we are able to open up in a safe way and in a way where nobody else's energy is involved in our practice or in our processing or in our journaling or whatever it may be we do in this refuge. But we're cultivating a different way of engaging with the problems in the world and with our own responses, and ultimately creating a space for freedom, creating a space for renewal, for re-energizing. And it's hard to do that when the energy of others and this sort of collective consciousness, or what we might call a colonized form of consciousness, where our own consciousness is being colonized by all of the voices and all of the rhetoric and all of the sort of dualistic, polarized voices are just crowding in. And we participate in that as well. I know I do sometimes. And so coming into practice, coming into this lovely meditation space that I have at home, I find peace from that. It can't be the final story. So this is what I'm trying to get at here with this way of seeing refuge as a place of simplicity, as a place of lightening, repositioning, and ultimately energy clearing. So whatever your refuge looks like for you, for me, it may be working with chakra meditations and clearing the energy channels and relinquishing sort of the density, the smoky residue that builds up in certain parts of the body. You know, so you can see refuge here. It's not just an escaping from things and a way of kind of getting away from things, which that's what vacations are for. Refuge can be something deeper and more meaningful because we are renewing, but we are also re-engaging. It's not often talked about this in the texts, you know. Refuge is that sort of retreat into Sangha or into Buddha or into the teachings themselves, you know, the three refuges. Um, I don't think that the meaning of those three refuges in Buddhism, though, are escaping from anything, but rather being nourished by these three dimensions of the Buddha himself, of the teachings themselves, and of the community. That this is a place where we can truly be authentically ourselves and also work with what is beyond that as well. This openness of awareness, mindfulness of body, breath, feelings, mind, all of the things that we practice and talk about in our meditation.